For the past 3.5 years, I've been leading ROC-DC, which is part of a national organization called the Restaurant Opportunity Centers United. As the lead coordinator, I've been responsible for a lot of different projects there, but mostly ensuring that the work follows our mission. And so the mission of ROC is to improve working conditions and wages for restaurant workers. All of the ROCs across the country follow the same organizing theory or model, and basically we work in 3 areas, and that is to do workplace justice campaigns. This is where we help restaurant workers organize their workplaces, hold employers accountable when they're being exploited, having their wages stolen from, being discriminated against, and we help them with legal referrals. The second thing that we do is research and policy. So we're constantly surveying restaurant workers to learn about the conditions they face, what kind of benefits they have or don't have, just really what economic challenges restaurant workers face. And then we also research employers, business owners, and we quantify the data and use that to push for local and federal policies that will help restaurant workers. And then the last thing that we all do is build the high road. And so this is really working with good restaurant employers who do provide healthy workplaces and use them as models to show other employers how they can be profitable and treat their workers well. And we do that in a number of ways. In 2009, so we're a relatively young organization, and we started out like all the other ROCs, and that's researching. So we everything that we do is through an organizing lens. So we had surveys, and we surveyed 546 restaurant workers in Washington, D.C. We asked them, many of them for the first time in their lives, questions that people, really didn't ask them, which helped to elevate their consciousness and want to ask more about this organization. What is ROC? So the survey asked folks questions about their tip minimum wage, their wage theft. It asked them questions about if they got paid sick days, if they got vacation days, any kind of workplace training, if they'd ever been burned, cut, or bruised on the job. All kinds of things. And at the end of the survey, we asked folks if they'd be interested to learn more about ROC. So we collect their contact information, their phone number, and their email. That's how we built our initial base of restaurant workers. So we collected their contact information so that we could then call them back and schedule them in for a full orientation, so that we told them about all the different prongs of work that ROC does, what our mission is, what kind of campaigns that we're working on to improve their lives and get them further integrated into the organization. When a new member or a restaurant worker comes into ROC, they go through an orientation process, and basically we talk about what ROC's identity is and what our organizational values are. And if they can get down with that, then they are a member of ROC. Then they sign up for free and have access to all of that programs and campaigns and leadership development opportunities that we have. But our identity that we are clear about is that we're restaurant workers, and the organization is for restaurant workers by restaurant workers. It's the people who are most directly affected by a minimum wage of $2.13. It's people who are most affected by not having paid sick days and being at-will employees. You know, it's not our base of members is not necessarily employers or like academics or, you know, policy people. It's restaurant workers. So we're clear about our identity. Our values, so we have organizational values that we clearly explained during the orientation, and principles by which we organize by, and those are self determination. So again, that's for restaurant workers, by restaurant workers making the choices. It is diversity and acceptance. It's really important in the restaurant industry because everybody works in the restaurant industry, from all different ages, ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, religions, age. It's literally everybody. And in order to build power, you have to get over whatever prejudices you have so that you can come together. So we're a racial justice organization, and we say that like up front, you know, to join as membership. We value political consciousness and development in order to be able to fight the systems which oppress you. You have to understand how those systems work. So we do a lot of political education. We basically explain that and have different programs where we integrate those different values and principles into everything that we do. So it's very deliberate. Organizers use tools. Some of those tools are real simple. The first is called a one-on-one. It's really, really basic. A one-on-one is just it's an intentional conversation between one person and another, or one person representing an organization and another. But it's an intentional conversation with a goal. So a goal to figure out what that person or group's self-interest would be in helping with this campaign. So for example, at ROC-DC, after we did the 546 surveys, we discovered that 90% of DC restaurant workers didn't have access to a single paid sick day, which means that 60% of restaurant workers in DC have cooked, served, or handled food while they're sick with things like the flu, things like H1N1, conjunctivitis, diarrhea, all kinds of really gross things. And this was a priority for the members because they were restaurant workers. It was their self-interest to not continue going to work sick and potentially making their co-workers sick, the consumers sick that they were feeding. And it was also their self-interest to not have to risk being fired because you have to call out sick. If you don't have access to a benefit, it's, you know, and you live in an at-will employment district, then basically that means you can get fired for any reason and without notice. And so a lot of restaurant workers report when they're sick, or when their children are sick, or a family member is sick, if they can't find someone to cover a shift for them, then they just get fired, which is against their economic interest. So we did the surveys, found that that was a problem, organized a group of restaurant workers who were dedicated and wanted to basically build a campaign to create a law that would protect workers from that. So we did that through the one-on-ones with the surveys, and then one-on-ones with other members within that. Then we had to do a power mapping, basically. So you look at who are different groups within your community who are affected also. So it's not just restaurant workers who are affected by this issue, it's also business employers. If a law is implemented, then their practices, they're going to have to change their ways. They're going to be affected. Who else is affected? Consumers are affected because they come to the restaurant and eat in this food. Who are organized consumer groups that can help push this cause? Who else has the power within your system to help actually change that law? So you look at your city council or your state government or federal government structure. Who are the committees and the power people that you need to have meetings with and learn more about, and who are the people that have power over those people that can influence them also? So you do like a big power mapping and an analysis basically of the resources in your community, and then you start putting together an action plan based on something else you can use called a SWOT analysis, where you look at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that would affect, how your campaign goes, or if, how you're able to go about winning your campaign. So you put your action plan and all of this data together basically, and then you start moving. You need to look at who are the people responsible, accountable, informed, consented, all of these things to move things forward. So I guess I answered like more than that question. I just kind of went on a roll, but you create coalition based on like who it makes sense to create a coalition with. So you can do that in a number of ways. First of all, folks in the government are there to serve us as the people. So the first time that I went to city council or went to the federal government, I was scared to call and make an appointment, but they were incredibly friendly, and they have to be, because they're there to serve you, and also they don't know exactly who you represent, how many votes you carry with you, and that's often in their self-interest. Politicians, government officials want to get reelected, so you consider that when you go in to talk with them. But you set up appointments with them. You show up to council hearings and public hearings that are important to them. You support them publicly, and they in turn then support you publicly. It's different from building a relationship with like an actual restaurant worker that's private, where you have a one-on-one with them. Everything with a government person is very public and accountable and transparent. So yeah, the government is surprisingly just easier to access than you might think. They're there to serve the people, so their information is online. It doesn't hurt to take somebody that has already a good relationship though with you to meet that person the first time, or at a strategic meeting if they may have some kind of power or sway over that official's interest. Nonprofits and community organizations access resources in a number of different ways. I think that the best way is through funds that actually come from the people who are affected, because they're invested in it. They feel like a part of the change, and it's free range money. You can do with it as you need to, but oftentimes in the communities that we're organizing, restaurant workers, for example, tipped workers make a tip minimum wage of $2.13. Back of the house workers, cooks, prep cooks, dishwashers, national average is like $8 or something below. So we are not a base of people that has a lot of money. But it's important to get that. But it's also important to get individual donations from people that have it, people that care, that you have one-on-ones with and understand their self-interest. It's also important to do grassroots fundraising events regularly to get the community involved, to be visual and public about what's going on, and that also helps build your ally base. But another way that nonprofits get their money is through foundations, so through government grants and private foundations that give large block sums of money to complete specific projects and whatnot. So, yeah, there's all different ways to get money to do the work that you need to do. But I think the other thing that is really important is that nonprofits or community organizations who are trying to fight for social change, their biggest resource is people and time. And so in order to get more people together to build power, like, you just have to organize one-on-one. You have to build those relationships with people. And you have to find out what talents they offer, what individual resources they have. You never know who has a printer here or like an event space there that'll really come in handy. So there's so much wealth and resources just already within your community. We have everything that we need already. You just have to find it. Organizing is really hard, especially when you live in a economic system that has a lot of people working on low wages, that they have to have 2 to 3 jobs. People are busy, they don't have time to hear about their rights. They don't have time to like go out and organize, They only have time to, just make ends meet. So it can be really challenging. And I persevere through that through the love and commitment and creativity that the restaurant workers that I've worked with have. I'm there to help lead and develop their leadership, but their strength is my strength is their strength. Like, we keep each other going. The other thing that's really important, aside from, working with your community and supporting each other, is just really self-care, taking care of yourself, doing healthy activities that restore you. So if that's making sure that you get enough rest at night, or eating healthier, or exercising, or meditating, or doing yoga, whatever it is that helps relax your mind and keep your body healthy and not stressed out, is really, really important, because this work will burn you out really, really quickly. All kinds of folks work in the restaurant industry. It's incredibly diverse. So, and in my own experience, I'll just talk about a little bit about the occupational segregation that exists within the restaurant industry, and how that's historically accurate of what we've seen before that pits workers against each other. So, unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., and in a lot of metropolitan areas, women, people of color, and immigrants are way overrepresented in the lowest paying, most dangerous, and jobs with least access to promotion or benefits. You'll see women and immigrants of color, people of color with darker skin in the back of the house as dishwashers, as prep cooks. And as you get closer to the front of the house, you're going to find more lighter and exotic and Caucasian folks. This is within like fine dining restaurants. And then you also see occupational segregation from sector to sector. You're going to find more people of color in fast food and then casual mom and pop places, but then more Caucasian and more male in the fine dining restaurants, and as managers and servers and bartenders, folks that make the most money. So it's pretty surprising that it exists when it's 2013, and when there was such a big movement for equality and diversity and inclusion through the 60s and 70s. But we still have a long way to go in terms of acceptance and racial awareness for all people. So you'll find that the workers of color from different countries oftentimes don't like the native workers of color who are, here. Or you'll find that the lighter skinned workers in the front of the house, like they don't often associate or have to talk to the people in the back of the house. So there's kind of like, there's not a lot of solidarity within restaurants themselves or within the restaurant industry. Historically, restaurants have not been organized. They don't have unions, so it's not a place where you get political education or like where you know about your rights. So it's a survivalist place. It's very competitive. And it's hard to overcome that and build solidarity within workers who have been shaped like that, and where the wealth disparity has been getting bigger and bigger over the last 20 years. So how do you overcome that? How do you respond to it? You have to have a lot of one-on-ones, understand what people's background and personal experiences, why they respond in a certain way. And you have to kind of just like find what's at the core of it and help like frame messages that show them that it's more powerful when you come together, when you stand up together, that your skin color or your religion or your accent, it doesn't really matter, because all of you are in the same economic situation. All of you are making $8 an hour together. All of you are making $2.13 as your base wage together, and it sucks all the way across. At the end of the day, like, everybody needs to work with dignity and have respect and opportunities on the job. And most people can understand and get down with that. So it's a matter of just working around it, doing a lot of labor education and history, and showing how historically it's a repeat. What's happening today is repetitive tactics that has always been used in hierarchical or capitalistic settings. Well, ROC is a worker center, and worker centers are a recent model of organizing within the labor movement. So they've really just kind of popped up in the last 10 to 15 years. So historically, working people have been organized through unions, and there was a golden period through the what started in the 30s and grew very strong through the 60s, but then towards the let me back up. So through that period, there's a large working class, middle class population of people where you could have one job and have living wages and good benefits and like retire and buy a home and achieve the American dream, right? There were still a lot of people marginalized away from that, but this period of time in our history is when the most folks had that. But then through the late 70s and 80s, our economy began shifting. We become more of a service-oriented economy instead of production-based economy. And you start having more small employers like pop up, and basically a decline in unionization, a decline in organized power. And more power of employers, right? So ROC is an organization that has emerged in response to the overwhelming huge population of unorganized workers, traditionally unrepresented workers. There are over 13 million restaurant workers in the United States, but only 0.01% are currently unionized. And it is the largest and fastest growing private sector industry in the nation. So what you have is an American economy that is growing on an industry that's proliferating, no wages or benefits. Like more people like myself, like high school students, like yourselves, college students, even people with master's degree are going to the restaurant industry because it's huge and growing. And that's not, I mean, that's great. We want it to grow, but we want it to grow so that it provides people with an opportunity to actually live and take care of themselves, to put food on their own tables. So we've emerged with this model of doing research, advocacy, and direct organizing like other worker centers. The domestic workers movement is using similar tactics. And taxi cab drivers, there's a United Workers Congress right now, a whole bunch of different retail workers, other workers who are unorganized, who are starting to use similar tactics that unions have used in the past, but it's different now. It's like adapted to the new kind of economy that we have. And traditional labor is now starting to work with worker centers in community coalitions and organizations like DC Jobs with Justice and National Jobs with Justice, to bring worker centers, community organizations, labor unions, faith groups, students groups all together to really build a movement to shift the economy, shift workers' rights, to shift the power back to workers in this country. So we all of the different things inform each other and grow out of each other. We learn from each other.